I feel like last year with everything up in the air, we didn't even know if Tokyo 2021 was, or I guess it's still 2020 technically, was even going to happen. So now that we know it's happening, the trials are actually here. Like the closer we get, the more, I guess, surreal it feels because, I think even 3 months ago, we didn't even know if Tokyo 2020 was going to happen. But now the trials are here. It's been 5 years since 2016. Me personally, I have some things to redeem, and I'm looking for some good redemption here at the trials. So it's been a lot of anxiousness and a lot of anxiety / eagerness just leading up into these trials.
You mentioned in the beginning of your chat that this event means a lot to you because of what happened in 2016. But clearly, the athlete you were in 2016 is very different from the athlete you are now. You're a reigning world champion. You're a favorite. You have bigger goals than just qualifying for a team. Because of that, though, do you still feel like you're a newbie because you haven't made it an Olympic team? And if that's true, what advice would you give towards other like college kids who are kind of in your position from 2016, like fellow A&M athletes at Thingmo, Brandon Miller, and other like Oregon college kids?
Yeah. So what was the first part of the question? No, I don't feel like a newbie anymore. I feel like I'm far past that whole rookie stage thing. I mean, I would have graduated college last year if I would have stayed. So, I mean, since 2016, since, my debut in professional, a lot of ups and downs. But lately, these past couple of years, since I made the transition out here to Oregon and been coached out here by Pete, I feel like it's just been a steady progression. Like things have been going good. Things have been in the right direction. And it's just two completely different athletes from looking at where I'm at now to where I was at in 2016. Like for me to even go back and say like, I need redemption off of that, I feel like is silly because I feel like I fulfilled so many things within that time that have shown that I've been able to overcome those struggles and things like that. But for me in 2016, as that college athlete, that freshman coming out, I think it was just a lot of unknowns that kind of led to that self-destruction at the trials then. But for someone like a Thing, like I don't know how to give advice to someone like that. She's on a whole nother level. Like I used to be able to say like, oh, I was kind of the same way she was when she was first coming out. Like she broke some indoor records in college. And then when she went to outdoors, she just kept that momentum going. And as she got better, like I couldn't relate to what she's doing. I don't think any athlete that went from the college system to professional system, like I'm sure she will right now, can kind of relate to her progression. Like for some reason, she's 19, she's so young, but she has a mature, head on her shoulders, and she knows how to do rounds. She knows how to practice and maintain healthy status. So I don't know any advice to give to someone like that because it seems like she has everything figured out. But, kind of like you said, everything is different once you're at the pro scene. So, yeah, I don't know.
It looks like could be warm in Eugene. There's been a lot of talk about the temperatures in Tokyo next month. Just curious if there's concerns about the humidity and temperatures in Tokyo, and what kind of strategies do you have? What kind of things can you do to kind of compensate or prepare for that?
I like the heat. I'd like to think of myself as a long sprinter, if anything, kind of a wannabe sprinter. So the hotter, the better. I went to Texas A&M, so I personally love the heat. I don't think it's going to find anything difficult. I think most 800-meter runners would rather run in the heat opposed to the cold too. And I've been complaining out here in Portland for the past 6 months about how crappy the weather is. So I'm not going to start complaining now once it gets too hot.
Your group, unlike other groups, chose to go over to Europe last summer during the pandemic and race. I'm curious first to know how cool were you with that decision to travel to Europe during the pandemic, and then secondly, how that has benefited you or not benefited you as you prepare this year.
Yeah. So yeah, Pete made the decision I guess he didn't make the decision. We're all grown adults and we can think for ourselves, but he thought it'd be a good idea for us to kind of get some sort of a season in as if it was an off season. So we did decide to do a little bit of European circuit there. We spent about 3 weeks over there competing in, I think, 3 or 4 meets, some diamond leagues, some just like world challenge meets and stuff like that. And I think the decision behind that was just to kind of create some normalcy because kind of like what we were just talking about, like it was a weird year for us. So it was just kind of like, we didn't really find what our purpose was. We were losing motivation by the day. Like we were training, but we didn't really know what we were training for. And, Pete saw that we were all fit enough to kind of compete, and he didn't want to waste that time. I know other groups like Bowerman decided to stay in Portland, and Oregon Track Club decided to stay down in Eugene. But we decided to do something a little different. And looking back, I think it wasn't a bad decision. It didn't really help or hurt. Like it made a little bit of prize money and stuff like that. But as far as racing experience and getting sharper, I don't really think it made that much of a difference. Some of the best seasons I've had have been from seasons of taking a complete, year off. Back in 2018, I took the whole season off, and 2019 was a good season. So I don't think it's necessarily, a pro or a con to keep on racing. We're healthy, so we did it, but there wasn't really too much thought behind it.
I want to pick up on what Jenny was just talking about with, the need to develop coping mechanisms over the last year for obvious reasons. I want to ask actually all of you, are you finding that you're needing to use those currently even, or maybe as we get even closer to Tokyo? Because I'm sure you've all heard that there are still people who are saying, or who are asking, are these games going to happen? You're hearing about, large percentages of the Japanese population not wanting the games to happen. We're hearing about low vaccination rates. So is this a problem? Does it get in the way of your training? And how do you cope with that?
To be a good athlete and to perform at the top of your level, like, we all have some sort of ability to decompartmentalize things. So you're not really thinking about the what ifs. You're just training and kind of going full force to, in preparation, to anticipating that's going to happen. Obviously, I do think it is different than 2016. I know, like Jenny said, like, everything is, there's always like questions about, whether the Olympics are ready to be ready back in 2016, like the Zika virus. But, this is a whole different enemy. This is coronavirus. Zika virus, I don't even know if they killed too many people. Like, I know some communities were hit harder than others, but most of us know, somebody died from corona. Just staying right behind it, like, to kind of dismiss it, I think would be, a little ignorant. But it just, I don't know. I understand where they're kind of coming from when they say, like, they don't want the Olympics to be held. But at the end of the day, like, we trust the IOC in making the right decision and knowing that they can hold these games safely. But it is kind of frustrating when you get people asking you all the time, like, oh, they still have the Olympics, because it's a 1 in a 4 year thing. Like, people really don't understand how the Olympics work. Like, they think it's like a sign-up sheet. So all my friends are like stupid. They think, like, they're like, oh, are you going to the Olympics? It's like, well, I hope so, because they don't really know what the hell's going on. But yeah, I think just kind of now that we're closer to it, it's easier to not think about all the what ifs, because we're just so headstrong in that it's happening now.
All three of you have, normally had the opportunity to travel internationally, face the world's best leading into events like this, through the indoor season, through the outdoor season. This year, a lot of competition has been domestically based, smaller venues, you could say, maybe less crowds. So you're going into Eugene and the trials as kind of the largest opportunity to run in I guess kind of a world-class audience and crowd and all these things. How is that different this year? Where kind of the trials is that first real significant stage where you don't have the pre's and the other things that come before it in normal years.
We always got to go over to Europe and compete and run fast with them. So for them to finally have to come over here, especially with World Championships next year, I think it'll be, it'll be cool. It'll be fun. But also, I feel like the fact that we have a big stadium, like, let alone, I don't know what the percentage of capacity is going to be, but we don't have anything like this. I guess maybe Penn Relays kind of. Like, we don't have a stadium like this in the country. Like, I don't know who's been there to see it yet, but even if it's full or not, I feel like just the atmosphere of, like, having, like, the stadium kind of fully surrounded you and stuff like that, I think is going to play a big effect. And I know it's not the historic Hayward Field, but it's definitely, it's really cool. It's going to be special.
I just had a question for Donavan. I know you've already touched on it, Donavan, but just comparing the athlete that you were in 2016 to now, can you just reflect on, like, the biggest lessons you've learned and also what you've learned about yourself, and also the same comparison to the athlete you were in 2019 to now? Yeah, so I hate going back to it, but I know we should go back to it, because 2016 was a hell of a lot different than what 2019 was, I guess now 2 years ago. But just the athlete then, like, I feel like I was ignorant to everything, which was a pro and kind of a con at the same time. But I don't think I did anything else differently than other athletes. I was 18 years old when I did that, or no, 19 years old. So I had a lot of ups and downs between now and 2019. But if I was in the collegiate system, you guys probably wouldn't have noticed them as much, but it was the fact that I was doing them at Diamond League races and at bigger meets and at USAs and stuff like that, and in World Championships. So, I had a lot of, ups and downs, and it wasn't up until I finally had a group that I could surround myself with and kind of have more structure and kind of have somewhat of a comparison to what I had in college. That was when I feel like I had the biggest, progression, was when I had,
a good group of guys to train around. And I think that's been the biggest difference for me is before that, I was always kind of training by myself, and, I really didn't know where to compare myself at with training and stuff like that. But now I have guys like, Craig and Eric, and even the girls I train with a lot of times, and I can't keep up with them, and they're kind of pushing me every day. So I think that's been the biggest thing for me is finding a group and, somewhat of a family oriented group that, kind of gets the best out of each other. And that's what pushed me to where I've been able to get today.
First to Donovan, I saw you entered in the 1500. Is there any chance that you run that race?
But yeah, for the 15, definitely a possibility. I have the luxury of having the 8 completely separate from the 15. So I could possibly double if I wanted to. And I don't have to necessarily use it as a safety net because it is 2 completely separate events. So it's not completely out of the question. I would consider it, but my main focus right now is obviously the 800. So we'll see how that goes and just kind of play it by ear, see how my body holds up, and yeah, just see how that goes.
I guess one of the things I'm curious about, this is something that a lot of elite athletes have to do, but you're one of them. How are you managing, the peaking for the trials and then trying to peak again at the Olympics? Because the 800, obviously it's a pretty strong event. You have to be kind of on your game to make the team. How difficult is it to manage that and making sure that you're fit enough to make the team, but also maybe not peak fitness that you want in Tokyo?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. It's making sure that you're fit enough. Doesn't mean that you're at your peak fitness for trials. And that can, reign difficult because a lot of athletes that are there are happy to be there, and that's their world championship. And that's their Olympics is the Olympic trials. So they're giving it their all. But I think in order for us to, medal at these Olympics, which is, I think ultimately we have good enough guys to do that. We shouldn't have to be 100% at the trials. And I'm not taking anything away from anybody at the trials. Like, we're still going to run fast, they're going to be good. But there definitely should be a difference between where you're at the trials and where you're at for I guess what Olympics will be this year. But it is kind of different because I think in 2019 we had such a long break that we were able to almost take probably a whole 2 weeks off of just down and rest. Whereas this week this time I feel like it's going to be just more intense training. So yeah, we're already hitting things pretty hard and we're doing things a little bit more intensely, but it's just going to get even harder after that. So it will be different. I never really had that yet, but yeah, I think that's the main thing is, yeah, you got to be on top of your game for the trials, but that just means you have to be even better at the Olympics. And if we can do that, then we could possibly make home some medals, which is the ultimate goal.
Donovan, after you ran in Doha, I think you had like a little change in your confidence level. And I just remember talking to you at the indoor meets, and you seemed a little more confident. And then this last race at Portland, it came down. It was the most entertaining 800 I've seen all season. It came down to the last centimeters. Take us through that. Tell us where your head was during that race and what kind of confidence it gave you for the trials.
Yeah, I think, from the outside looking in, you see like, oh, that was a close race. But I think a lot of people were taking away from Lopez, the way that he ran. Like, he ran a really good race. It wasn't necessarily that I ran a little off. Like, he's a hell of an athlete. He's had the most momentum, I think, as an 800-meter runner this year. And I think not even from a physical standpoint, it's kind of like what Jenny was saying earlier. Like, you don't know what like trials and tribulations athletes have been going through. So that big win for me was knowing all the stuff that I've had to go through previously and still come out there and still compete and still come out healthy. At the end of the day, that was a bigger win for me than actually winning the race. But then to actually fight that last 100 and kind of rig a little bit because I haven't been tested like that in a while. That was, that was the ultimate thing for me that I got at that race. It wasn't the time, it wasn't the place, but it was just knowing that I'm mentally able to, withstand these battles and just little aches and pains that are coming up. And I think that's given me the most confidence too, instead of just what I had in 2019, which was, a healthy season, fast times, and a world title to finish it off. There's other things that have came, and I've been able to, I've been able to be fine with all of the diversity and stuff that's coming up as well.